Drive to Survive might not be universally loved by Formula One fans, but it has developed Formula One's greatest rivalry of the last decade into a fierce, piercing inferno. No, I'm not talking about Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton. I'm talking about their bosses, Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. During 2021, the two are at each other's throats constantly, and since then, the media and DTS have intensified the relationship. While the two haven't been in battle on track for a while now, their off-track battle has continued to burn with regular jabs and insults thrown in the media, but perhaps their greatest battle is only just beginning. Is the 2026 engine regulations going to send Toto and Christians' conflict out of control? Why don't you stick around to find out? The Toto Wolff vs Christian Horner storyline is one of my favourite sideshows to Formula One. Obviously, the main event will always be on track, but these two are constantly adding some colour to the weeks in between racing. They both love being the bigger man, taking the high ground and trying to let the whole world know they're in the right, but they both try to do it at the same time and just end up looking even pettier. When things get really heated between the two of them, they remind me of two siblings who have had a fight and the parents are trying to find out who started it. It is never ever them in the wrong, it's always the other one. And who could forget the truly iconic team principals meeting from last season, where Toto Wolff truly lost it over porpoising, and the two started swearing each other and arguing over what Checo has and hasn't said. And Gunther just giggling the entire time like the third child in this odd family who enjoys watching his brothers get in trouble. You couldn't script it, it was too perfect. Since the porpoising arguments of early 2022 though, things have just reduced to a simmer between the two. You get the occasional little comment in the media, poking fun at each other in one way or another, but nothing too serious. That is starting to change though, as we get closer to the 2026 season and the massive engine regulation changes that are coming. Just in case you've missed what is happening with the engines in 2026, let me fill you in. The rule changes in 2026 are aimed at making Formula One even more sustainable and innovative, helping make the car industry as a whole better for the world in the race against global warming. To make this happen, there'll be 3 times the electrical power of the current engines. The aim is for the MGU-K, which is the electrical component of the 2026 engines, to produce around 350 kilowatts in 2026, compared to the current power unit's 120 kilowatts of energy. The engines will still produce more than 1,000 horsepower, but with less fuel used. F1 is aiming for each car to use just 70 kilograms of fuel during a Grand Prix, compared with 100 kilograms in 2020. The engines will also be cheaper to make. There'll be an engine-specific cost cap to encourage more car manufacturers to get involved in finding innovative solutions. And finally, the cars will run on renewable fuel, not fossil fuel. The changes have already brought Honda back to the sport, convinced Audi to buy a team, and got Ford to partner with Red Bull. Clearly, the regulations in their current state, which were agreed on by all engine manufacturers after months and months and months of debate, are good. Everyone seems happy. Apart from one of our argumentative boys, Christian Horner. Since the new regs were confirmed, concerns have emerged about the potential for a negative impact on the spectacle of Formula One if elements of the new package do not work as hoped. At the regular team principals meeting at the Canadian Grand Prix with F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali, which hosted Toto and Christian's bust-up last season, fresh fears were raised specifically about the power unit rules that are already in place. It is understood that Red Bull team boss Christian Horner, who has mentioned the issue before in F1 Commission meetings, even questioned whether or not F1 needs a rethink over plans for a 50-50 split of power generation from the internal combustion engine and the battery. Instead, it's been suggested consideration should be made to try to shift things away from the electrical element to help avoid any risk of trouble. Early analysis conducted by teams has triggered worries that there could be a risk of cars running out of battery power at some tracks, because the electrical systems cannot regenerate enough energy from the MGU-K. Should this occur, then it could open up the potential for some bizarre behaviour from drivers to try to generate more energy on the entry to corners. They could also experience a sudden loss of speed on the straights. One source even suggested that if the rules do not deliver enough electrical power for the entire lap, then when the drivers lose a 350 kilowatt boost, which is equivalent to 470 horsepower that is allowed from the batteries, they could even be forced to change down gears on the straight. Of course, that analysis assumes that the drivers continue to drive their cars as they currently do, instead of adapting to the new regulations. On the other side of this argument, you could say that not being able to drive flat out all the time could be good for the spectacle. A car trying to overtake could pressure the car in front's battery, lowering their available charge until they can't defend an overtaking move. Drivers already do that with tyre temperature and wear, pressuring the car in front to push harder than their tyres can cope with, until they have to slow down to avoid destroying their tyres. While the FIA is confident that the situation is under control, and it is premature to be worried about matters, Horner has said that F1 needs to be careful with what happens, as he suggests it may be better to reduce the reliance on electrical power. I think that perhaps where we need to pay urgent attention before it's too late is to look at the ratio between combustion power and electrical power, he said at the Austrian Grand Prix. Horner does not believe the matter is too complicated to solve, as he suggests a simple 5% shift in combustion to electrical power could be enough to help. However, he says the matter is a critically important one to get right. We need to ensure that we're not creating a technical Frankenstein, which will require the chassis to compensate to such a degree with movable aero and reduce the drag to such a level that the racing will be affected, and that there will be no tow effect and no DRS effect, because effectively you're running like that at all points in time. I'll explain this point quickly. The teams have been running simulations with these new engines, as have the FIA, and apparently there may be more movable aero in 2026, such as the DRS system we currently have. This is being done because the cars might produce too much drag, making the engines work too hard and draining the battery power to such an extent that the drivers can't go flat out on the straights. Lowering the drag of the car makes it easier for the engine to accelerate the car, which is good for energy usage. Lowering the drag with DRS-like systems will reduce the tow effect that cars currently get though, which would then make overtaking harder as the following car would lose the advantage the tow provides. There is a complicated interplay of systems going on, and changing anything has a knock-on effect on everything. The data Red Bull are producing from their simulations obviously has Horner worried, but with all the engine manufacturers already signed up, and only 2.5 years left until these engines hit the track, he has left his worries very late. Probably far too late, something Toto Wolff has been very quick to point out. Responding to Horner's comments a day later, Wolff didn't pull any punches as he said there was zero chance of the regulations being changed. That's not going to happen. Zero chance, capital letters, Wolff said. So I don't know why these things are even coming up. We've developed those regulations over many years with all the auto manufacturers being involved. Is it challenging? Our chassis designers are saying, well, how are we going to do this? Yeah, super challenging. But zero, these regulations are not going to change anymore. They're not going to be postponed anymore, because the world needs to show innovation around sustainability. We need to reduce emissions, and we are super excited. 2026 will see the debut of the first engine made by the Red Bull Powertrains division, with the help of Ford. Wolff suggested that Horner's comments could be motivated by Red Bull struggling with the development of their engine. I think what frightens him more maybe is that his engine program is not coming along, and that maybe he wants to kill it that way, Wolff said. So you always have to question, what's the real motivation to say something like that? Questioning the motivation of comments made by Toto Wolff and Christian Horner is something I have always advocated. I guarantee you Toto is loving Christian's concerns, and I do think that Christian could be right to be concerned. Ford is producing the electrical component of the engine for Red Bull, and commercially, Ford's electric car department is seriously struggling, with massive recalls, poor performance, and supply chain issues. They're also very new to the EV market, and that lack of experience may be a problem for them. Red Bull and Ford might be finding difficulties with the new regulations, but Toto Wolff is going to love watching them struggle. The new engines are going to be a massive battleground in the next few years, and I can't wait to see Toto and Christian at each other's throats again. Do you have any concerns about the 2026 engine regulations? Do you think Horner is just trying to get the regs changed to be more favourable for his team? Or do you think Toto has missed something that Red Bull have found? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.